There are towns that appear on maps, and there are towns people only seem to find when they're running from something. Blackwater Cove was one of those places. Perched on the edge of the Atlantic Ocean, the tiny coastal town was wrapped in thick pine forests, towering cliffs, and an almost permanent veil of silver fog. Wooden fishing boats rocked gently in the harbor, seagulls circled lazily overhead, and every evening, just before sunset, the old lighthouse awakened with its familiar beam, sweeping across the restless sea. It was beautiful. The kind of place where strangers stayed longer than they intended. The kind of place where everyone smiled, but nobody told the whole truth. Because every full moon, someone disappeared. It had happened for 42 years. Never twice in the same month. Never the same person. And always without a single witness. The missing would return days later, confused, exhausted, and unable to remember where they had been. The sheriff blamed sleepwalking. The doctors blamed stress. The townspeople blamed the sea. Eventually, everyone stopped asking questions. Except one man. Rain tapped softly against the windshield of a dusty blue pickup truck as Ethan Carter drove along the winding coastal road. His GPS had lost signal nearly 20 miles back. Not that it mattered. There was only one road into Blackwater Cove. And according to the locals, only one road out. Ethan smiled to himself. People in small towns love dramatic stories. He had built an entire career proving that every ghost had a human explanation. Every haunted house had an owner hiding something. Every miracle left fingerprints. He expected this case to be no different. His editor certainly did. "Spend a week there," she'd said. "Write something spooky before Halloween." Ethan had rolled his eyes. "I investigate corruption," he'd replied. "Not bedtime stories." She'd simply smiled. "Then investigate why 42 missing people all forgot the same 3 nights." That had caught his attention. The town welcomed him with silence. Not an eerie silence. A peaceful one. Rain glistened on cobblestone streets lined with flower boxes and weathered stone cottages. Warm yellow lights glowed from cafe windows, and the smell of fresh bread drifted through the cool ocean air. It looked less like a place haunted by mysteries, and more like somewhere people came to heal. His truck rolled past the harbor before stopping outside a small bookstore. A wooden sign swayed gently above the entrance. Moon and Tide Books. The display window was filled with old novels, pressed flowers, candles, and handwritten recommendations taped beside each book. A tiny black cat slept on the windowsill. Ethan smiled. At least someone here looked welcoming. He grabbed his notebook and stepped inside. A little brass bell chimed above the door. The scent of vanilla, cedarwood, and old paper wrapped around him instantly. Soft instrumental piano music drifted through the shop. For a moment, he forgot why he'd come. Rows of towering bookshelves stretched toward the back of the store, where someone stood on a small wooden ladder, carefully arranging books on the highest shelf. Long auburn hair, an oversized cream sweater, a faded green skirt. She hadn't noticed him. As she reached for another book, the ladder shifted. Just enough. Ethan reacted instinctively. He crossed the room in 2 quick steps. "Careful!" She turned too quickly. Her foot slipped. The ladder tipped sideways. Without thinking, Ethan caught her before she could hit the floor. For one suspended heartbeat, neither of them moved. She looked up into his eyes. He noticed tiny freckles across her nose. Storm gray eyes. And an expression that somehow looked surprised and familiar. "I'm so sorry," she said, laughing nervously as she stepped back onto her feet. "I usually don't fall for strangers." Ethan laughed. "Good. I'd hate to make that a habit." She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear. "I'm Isla." "Ethan." She tilted her head. You're not from here. It shows? You looked at the lighthouse before you looked at the ocean. He blinked. Is that unusual? Only visitors do that. Outside, a church bell rang once. Then twice. Then 3 times. Isla's smile slowly faded. She glanced toward the window. The rain had stopped. Clouds drifted apart. High above the quiet town, the first edge of a full moon appeared. The moon continued its slow climb above Blackwater Cove, bathing the quiet streets in silver light. For a long moment, Ethan and Isla simply stood by the bookstore window. "It's beautiful," Ethan said. "It is." Her voice was barely a whisper. "But beautiful things can still frighten you." He looked at her. "You really don't like the full moon." She smiled politely, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I've learned not to trust nights like this." "Ethan, you make it sound like the moon has a schedule." "It does." She glanced toward the old clock hanging above the register. "And unfortunately, so do I." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, the little black cat jumped onto the counter and rubbed against Isla's arm. She picked him up, holding him close. "His name is Oliver. He seems attached to you. He found me outside the bookstore 3 years ago, during a storm. I guess we rescued each other." Ethan smiled. "You've always lived here?" "No. I came when I was 19. Why this town?" She hesitated. "I don't really remember." That answer caught him off guard. "You don't remember moving here?" "I remember arriving. I remember buying the bookstore. I remember meeting everyone." She gently scratched Oliver behind the ears. "But I don't remember why I chose this place." Ethan frowned. "That's unusual." "I know. It bothers me too." The kettle began to whistle. Isla carefully placed Oliver back on the counter before pouring 2 cups of tea. Steam curled into the air, carrying the scent of chamomile and honey. She handed one to Ethan. "My grandmother always said tea makes difficult conversations easier." "So," he smiled, "should I expect a difficult conversation?" "Maybe." They sat beside the large front window overlooking the quiet harbor. For several minutes, neither spoke. Outside, waves rolled gently against the wooden docks. The lighthouse beam swept across the sea every few seconds. Finally, Ethan opened his notebook. "I'm here because of the disappearances." Isla nodded. "I guessed." "Do you believe the stories?" "I believe people disappear. And come back." "Yes. Without remembering where they've been." She slowly wrapped both hands around her cup. "That's true too." "You sound certain." "I've seen it." "Friends?" She looked down into her tea. "My neighbors. The mailman. The baker. The woman who owns the flower shop. They all disappeared once." Ethan raised an eyebrow. "And no one investigated?" "People tried." "What happened?" "They left." "Why?" "No one knows." The answer felt strangely rehearsed, almost as if she'd repeated it many times before. He changed the subject. "What about you?" "What about me?" "Have you ever disappeared?" The question hung in the air. Isla's fingers tightened around the warm cup. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked toward the moon again. Then she quietly nodded. 3 times. Ethan blinked. "You?" "The first time I was 20. I woke up on the beach. My shoes were gone. My hands were covered in sand. I had no idea how I'd gotten there. The second time..." She stopped. "What?" "I woke up inside the lighthouse. The door was locked from the inside. No one could explain it." "And the third?" She looked directly at him. "I woke up in the middle of the forest. There were fresh footprints around me, but only one set. My own. A cool breeze drifted through the bookstore. Ethan closed his notebook. "You've never told anyone this?" I told the sheriff. "What did he say?" "Stress." "The doctor?" "Sleepwalking." "And what do you think?" For the first time since they'd met, fear appeared in her eyes. "I think." She paused. "Someone wants us to believe we're sleepwalking." Before Ethan could respond, the bell above the front door chimed. Both of them looked up. An elderly woman entered carrying a lantern instead of an umbrella. She smiled warmly at Isla. Then her eyes settled on Ethan. "So," she said softly. The journalist finally arrived. "Ethan, does everyone in this town already know?" The woman nodded. "In Blackwater Cove, news always arrives before people do." She stepped closer. "My name is Isla Rowan." Ethan frowned. "Rowan?" Isla smiled. "My grandmother." Evelyn took Ethan's hand gently. Her smile remained warm, but her next words sent a chill through him. "Be careful who you trust, Mr. Carter. Some people in this town aren't afraid of the full moon. They're waiting for it." Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that Evelyn's warning had been meant for him alone. The elderly woman released his hand and smiled as though she hadn't said anything unusual. "You've inherited the bookstore beautifully," she told Isla. "I still arranged the history shelf the way you taught me," Isla replied. Evelyn laughed softly. "I noticed." She walked slowly through the narrow aisles, her fingertips gliding across the spines of old books. It seemed she knew exactly where every book belonged. Finally, she stopped in front of the small shelf marked Local History. She pulled out a faded journal with a silver moon embossed on the cover. The same one Ethan had reached for earlier. "You were curious about this," Evelyn said. "I was." She held the journal for a moment before placing it on the wooden table between them, then asked before opening it. Ethan looked surprised. "You'll let me read it?" "Perhaps." She settled into a nearby chair. "But first, I want to know why you came." Ethan closed his notebook. "The official reason?" "If there are two reasons, I'd like the real one," he smiled. "There usually are." He looked toward the rain-speckled window. 3 years ago, I investigated a missing college student. The police believed she'd run away. I believed someone had taken her. "What happened?" Isla asked quietly. "I was wrong." His voice grew softer. "Months later, they found her. She'd left on her own. My articles destroyed an innocent man's life." Silence settled over the bookstore. I resigned. For almost a year, I stopped writing altogether. Evelyn studied him carefully. "And now? I only investigate cases when something truly doesn't make sense." He glanced at Isla. 42 disappearances. Every victim returning without memories. No ransom, no bodies. No explanation. He shook his head. "That doesn't make sense." Evelyn slowly nodded. "No, it doesn't." For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked almost sad. "You remind me of someone." "Who?" "A man who asked the same questions 40 years ago." Ethan leaned forward. "What happened to him?" "He left." "Did he solve anything?" She smiled faintly. "I don't know." "No one ever saw him again." The words lingered in the room. Outside, the lighthouse beam swept across the harbor. Oliver, the black cat, suddenly jumped onto the windowsill. His ears stood straight. His eyes fixed on something outside. He let out a low, uneasy meow. Isla followed his gaze. "What is it?" Ethan walked to the window. The street was almost empty. Only one figure stood beneath the old street lamp across the road. A man. Long dark coat, wide-brimmed hat. standing perfectly still, watching the bookstore. Ethan frowned. "Do you know him?" Isla looked through the glass. She hesitated. "I can't see his face." The stranger never moved, never waved, never looked away. Ethan reached for the door. "I'll ask if he needs something." "No." Both women spoke at the same time. He stopped. Evelyn's expression had become unusually serious. "Don't." "Why not?" "Because if he's waiting," she looked toward the man. "He isn't waiting for you." A cold silence filled the bookstore. 30 seconds passed. Then the lighthouse beam swept across the street once more. The light briefly blinded Ethan. When it moved on, the stranger was gone. No footsteps, no car, nothing. Only the empty street remained. Ethan opened the door and stepped outside. Cool sea air brushed against his face. The cobblestones were still wet from the rain. He crossed to the street lamp. No footprints. No sign that anyone had been standing there at all. Then something caught his eye. Lying on the ground beneath the lamp was an old silver compass. Its glass was cracked. Its needle spun endlessly instead of pointing north. He picked it up. Engraved on the back were 4 words: "Return before moonrise ends." A chill ran through him. Slowly, he looked back toward the bookstore. Isla was standing in the doorway. She wasn't looking at him. She was staring at the compass. And for the first time, she looked as though she recognized it. Ethan turned the silver compass over in his hand. The metal felt strangely warm despite the cool night air. Its cracked glass reflected the moonlight, while the needle continued spinning in slow, restless circles. It never settled. "Isla?" She didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the compass. Her face had gone completely pale. Ethan walked back toward the bookstore. "You've seen this before." She nodded almost imperceptibly. "I think so." "You think?" She pressed a hand against her temple. "It's strange." "I know it. But I don't remember how." Evelyn stepped outside behind them. The moment she saw the compass, her expression changed. "Where did you find it?" "Beneath the street lamp." "No one was there?" "I saw a man. When I walked over, he'd vanished." Evelyn gently took the compass from Ethan's hand. She ran her thumb across the engraving. Her shoulders slowly tensed. "I was hoping this day wouldn't come." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. Instead of answering, she handed the compass back to him. "Keep it. You'll need it." "For what?" "You'll understand." Ethan laughed softly. "Everyone keeps telling me that." "Nobody actually explains anything." Evelyn smiled sadly. "Sometimes explanations arrive too early. And sometimes they arrive too late." She turned toward Isla. "You should close the shop." Isla looked confused. "It's only 10:30. "I know. Please." There was something in Evelyn's voice that made Isla nod without another question. Together they locked the front door. The little brass bell gave one final chime. The street outside had become unusually quiet. No cars. No footsteps. Even the waves seemed softer now. Ethan slipped the compass into his jacket pocket. "So," he looked at Isla. "What happens now?" She forced a smile. "I go upstairs. I make tea. I read until I fall asleep. And tomorrow morning? I hope I wake up in my own bed." He studied her carefully. "You really believe you could disappear tonight?" "I don't know what I believe anymore." The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. She wasn't trying to convince him of anything. She was scared. Ethan found himself wanting to protect her, a feeling that surprised him. He'd known her for less than an hour, yet something about her felt familiar, comforting. as if they'd met long before tonight. Evelyn quietly picked up her lantern. "I'll be going." "You aren't staying?" Isla asked. "No. But lock every window. And don't leave the apartment." "I won't." Evelyn looked at Ethan one last time. "If you hear someone knocking after midnight," she paused, "don't open the door." "What if it's Isla?" The old woman held his gaze. "If it's after midnight, it won't be." Without another word, Evelyn disappeared into the mist. Ethan watched her lantern until its warm glow vanished beyond the harbor. "Your grandmother really knows how to make a place feel mysterious." Isla laughed softly. "She always has." They climbed the narrow wooden staircase to the apartment above the bookstore. It was small but beautiful. Books filled every wall. A record player rested beside the window. Pressed flowers hung in tiny glass frames. The scent of cinnamon and old paper lingered in the air. "It feels like you." Ethan said it before he realized. She smiled. "You've known me for less than an hour." "I know. But it still feels true." A faint blush colored her cheeks. "Most people say it's too quiet." "I like quiet." "So do I." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward. It was peaceful, comfortable. Then, the old grandfather clock in the corner began to chime. Once, twice, 3 times, until 12 slow chimes echoed through the apartment. Midnight. The lights flickered. The record player suddenly turned on by itself. A soft melody filled the room. Neither of them had touched it. Isla's smile disappeared. "No," she whispered. "It started earlier this month." Before Ethan could ask what she meant, a loud knock echoed from downstairs. 3 slow knocks. Then silence. Both of them looked toward the apartment door. Another knock. This time, 5 slow knocks. Ethan took a cautious step toward the staircase. "I'll see who it is." Isla grabbed his wrist. Her hand was ice cold. "No." Her voice trembled. "Please, don't answer." From below, a woman's voice floated up through the silent bookstore. Soft, gentle, almost familiar. "Isla, I'm home." Isla's face drained of all color. She looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. "My mother," she whispered, "has been dead for 15 years. Ethan turned the silver compass over in his hand. The metal felt strangely warm despite the cool night air. Its cracked glass reflected the moonlight, while the needle continued spinning in slow, restless circles. It never settled. "Isla?" She didn't answer. Her eyes remained fixed on the compass. Her face had gone completely pale. Ethan walked back toward the bookstore. "You've seen this before." She nodded almost imperceptibly. "I think so." "You think?" She pressed a hand against her temple. "It's strange. I know it, but I don't remember how." Evelyn stepped outside behind them. The moment she saw the compass, her expression changed. "Where did you find it?" "Beneath the street lamp." "No one was there?" "I saw a man. When I walked over, he'd vanished." Evelyn gently took the compass from Ethan's hand. She ran her thumb across the engraving. Her shoulders slowly tensed. "I was hoping this day wouldn't come." "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. Instead of answering, she handed the compass back to him. "Keep it. You'll need it." "For what?" "You'll understand." Ethan laughed softly. "Everyone keeps telling me that." "Nobody actually explains anything," Evelyn smiled sadly. "Sometimes explanations arrive too early. And sometimes, they arrive too late." She turned toward Isla. You should close the shop. Isla looked confused. It's only 10:30. I know. Please. There was something in Evelyn's voice that made Isla nod without another question. Together they locked the front door. The little brass bell gave one final chime. The street outside had become unusually quiet. No cars, no footsteps. Even the waves seemed softer now. Ethan slipped the compass into his jacket pocket. So, he looked at Isla. What happens now? She forced a smile. I go upstairs. I make tea. I read until I fall asleep. And tomorrow morning? I hope I wake up in my own bed. He studied her carefully. You really believe you could disappear tonight? I don't know what I believe anymore. The honesty in her voice caught him off guard. She wasn't trying to convince him of anything. She was scared. Ethan found himself wanting to protect her, a feeling that surprised him. He'd known her for less than an hour, yet something about her felt familiar, comforting, as if they'd met long before tonight. Evelyn quietly picked up her lantern. I'll be going. You aren't staying? Isla asked. No. But lock every window. And don't leave the apartment. I won't. Evelyn looked at Ethan one last time. If you hear someone knocking after midnight, she paused. Don't open the door. What if it's Isla? The old woman held his gaze. If it's after midnight, it won't be. Without another word, Evelyn disappeared into the mist. Ethan watched her lantern until its warm glow vanished beyond the harbor. Your grandmother really knows how to make a place feel mysterious. Isla laughed softly. She always has. They climbed the narrow wooden staircase to the apartment above the bookstore. It was small but beautiful. Books filled every wall. A record player rested beside the window. Pressed flowers hung in tiny glass frames. The scent of cinnamon and old paper lingered in the air. It feels like you. Ethan said it before he realized. She smiled. You've known me for less than an hour. I know. But it still feels true. A faint blush colored her cheeks. Most people say it's too quiet. I like quiet. So do I. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence wasn't awkward, it was peaceful, comfortable. Then, the old grandfather clock in the corner began to chime. Once. Twice. 3 times, until 12 slow chimes echoed through the apartment. Midnight. The lights flickered. The record player suddenly turned on by itself. A soft melody filled the room. Neither of them had touched it. Isla's smile disappeared. No, she whispered. It started earlier this month. Before Ethan could ask what she meant, a loud knock echoed from downstairs. 3 slow knocks, then silence. Both of them looked toward the apartment door. Another knock. This time, 5 slow knocks. Ethan took a cautious step toward the staircase. I'll see who it is. Isla grabbed his wrist. Her hand was ice cold. No, her voice trembled. Please. Don't answer. From below, a woman's voice floated up through the silent bookstore. Soft, gentle, almost familiar. Isla. I'm home. Isla's face drained of all color. She looked at Ethan with tears in her eyes. My mother, she whispered, has been dead for 15 years. The envelope felt strangely heavy in Ethan's hands. The apartment had fallen silent again. The footsteps outside were gone. The woman's voice had disappeared with them. Only the soft crackle of the record player remained. Isla stared at the envelope as though it might vanish if she looked away. It has your name, she whispered. I've never met anyone here before tonight. Ethan carefully examined the paper. It wasn't old. The envelope was crisp and clean, sealed with dark blue wax. On the back was the same symbol engraved on the silver compass. A crescent moon resting above gentle waves. He looked at Isla. Have you seen this symbol before? She nodded slowly. It's carved into the old lighthouse, and on a few graves in the cemetery. What does it mean? No one knows. Ethan gently broke the wax seal. Inside was a single folded letter. No signature. No date. Only neat handwriting across the page. He began to read aloud. Mr. Ethan Carter, if this letter has reached you, then Isla has trusted you enough to bring you upstairs. Ethan stopped. He looked at Isla. You've never seen this? She shook her head. Never. He continued. By now, you've probably heard a voice that should not exist. Do not waste your time asking whether it was real. Ask instead why it wanted you to open the door. A chill crept through the room. Ethan kept reading. Tomorrow morning, before sunrise, go to the lighthouse. Climb exactly 127 steps. At the top, move the brass telescope toward the sea until it faces the oldest pine tree on the northern cliff. You will find what the town has forgotten. The letter ended with one final sentence. Trust Isla. She has been searching for the truth her entire life without realizing it. No signature, nothing else. Ethan folded the letter. Someone knew I was coming. And they know you. Isla looked frightened. I don't understand. I've never told anyone about any of this. Ethan slipped the letter back into its envelope. Then someone has been watching both of us. Neither of them liked that possibility. Outside, the church bell rang once. 1 o'clock in the morning. Isla rubbed her arms. I don't think either of us is sleeping tonight. I wasn't planning to. She smiled faintly. Neither was I. For the next hour, they searched every corner of the apartment. Old photographs, family letters, books, newspapers, anything connected to the disappearances. Most of it was ordinary, until Ethan noticed a framed photograph sitting on the highest bookshelf. It showed a much younger Isla standing beside the lighthouse. She couldn't have been older than 8. An older woman stood beside her, smiling warmly. Your grandmother? No. My mother. Ethan looked closer. Something wasn't right. Behind them, standing near the lighthouse door, was a man almost hidden by the fog. Only half his face was visible. He wore a long, dark coat and a wide-brimmed hat. The same figure Ethan had seen beneath the street lamp. Isla. His voice became quiet. Who's that? She took the photograph from his hands. The moment she saw the man, the color drained from her face. I've never noticed him before. You've had this picture for years. I know. She turned it over. A date was written on the back. October 18th. Beneath it, in her mother's handwriting, were 6 words. Never let her climb alone. Neither of them spoke. The lighthouse. The letter. The mysterious stranger. The warning. They were all pointing toward the same place. Ethan looked out the window. Far across the harbor, the lighthouse beams swept slowly across the sea. Then, just for a second, a small light appeared at the very top. Someone was standing inside the lighthouse, holding a lantern, watching the bookstore. Neither Ethan nor Isla slept. The light at the top of the lighthouse remained visible for nearly an hour before finally disappearing into the fog. By dawn, the rain had stopped. A pale golden sunrise spread across the ocean, turning the water into shimmering glass. Ethan folded the mysterious letter and slipped it into his jacket beside the silver compass. You still want to go? Isla asked. He smiled. Now I want to go even more. She laughed softly. I had a feeling you'd say that. Together they walked through the quiet streets of Blackwater Cove. The town was just beginning to wake. The bakery filled the air with the smell of warm bread. A fisherman waved from the harbor. An elderly couple arranged flowers outside their cottage. Everything looked perfectly ordinary. Too ordinary. As they passed the town square, Ethan noticed people watching them. Not openly, just small glances. Whispers exchanged behind coffee cups. Conversations stopping the moment they walked by. "They know we're going somewhere," he whispered. Isla didn't seem surprised. This town notices everything. The lighthouse stood at the edge of the cliffs, overlooking the endless Atlantic. Its white stone walls had weathered decades of storms. The heavy wooden door stood slightly open, waiting. Ethan pushed it gently. The old hinges creaked. Inside, cool air carried the scent of salt and ancient stone. A spiral staircase wound upward into darkness. He looked at Isla. 127 steps. She nodded. "Let's count." They climbed slowly. 1, 2, 3. The only sounds were their footsteps and the distant cries of seagulls. At step 43, Ethan noticed strange carvings in the stone wall. Tiny crescent moons, each one worn smooth with age. At step 81, they passed a narrow window overlooking the sea. The view stole his breath. The cliffs dropped sharply into crashing waves far below. "This place is incredible," he whispered. "It used to scare me. And now? It feels like it's trying to remember something." He looked at her. "That's an unusual way to describe a lighthouse." "I know. But it's the only way I can." They continued climbing. 124, 125, 126, 127. At the top waited a circular room filled with warm morning light. The enormous brass lantern towered overhead. Beside it stood an old telescope mounted on a polished wooden stand. Exactly as the letter had described. Ethan walked toward it. "It still works." He carefully turned the telescope toward the northern cliffs. The gears groaned softly as they moved. Finally, the telescope aligned with the oldest pine tree overlooking the sea. He looked through the lens. At first, nothing, just branches moving gently in the breeze. Then he noticed something unusual. A narrow footpath hidden behind the tree. It disappeared into the cliff itself. "Isla." She looked through the telescope. "I've lived here for 8 years. I've never seen that path. It leads somewhere." As Ethan adjusted the focus, sunlight struck something hidden among the rocks. A metal door, almost invisible, built directly into the cliffside. His pulse quickened. The letter was right. Before either of them could speak again, footsteps echoed up the staircase below. Slow, unhurried. Someone else was climbing toward the top. They looked at each other. Neither had heard the front door open. The footsteps continued, closer. Then a familiar voice drifted upward. "Beautiful morning for sightseeing." Sheriff Noah Brooks appeared at the top of the stairs, smiling warmly. He removed his hat and looked between Ethan and Isla. "I had a feeling I'd find you two here." His smile remained friendly, but his eyes never left the telescope. For one brief second, Ethan realized something. The sheriff wasn't surprised they had come to the lighthouse. It was almost as if he had been expecting them. The sheriff smiled, as though he'd simply bumped into old friends. "Morning," Noah Brooks said. "I didn't expect company this early." Ethan stepped away from the telescope. "We could say the same," Noah chuckled. "I've been climbing these stairs every morning for 15 years. It's part of my routine." His eyes drifted toward the telescope. "See anything interesting?" Ethan studied him carefully. "Just the view." Noah nodded. "It is beautiful. But beauty has a way of distracting people." He walked to the lantern room window and looked out over the sea. "My father used to tell me that the ocean only reveals what it wants you to see." "And what do you believe?" Ethan asked. "I believe people see what they're hoping to find." Silence settled between them. Isla quietly slipped the mysterious letter into her sweater pocket. The sheriff noticed, but said nothing. Instead, he turned toward Ethan. "How are you liking Blackwater Cove?" "It's peaceful." "It usually is." "And the disappearances?" Noah's smile faded. "I was wondering how long it would take before you asked." "You don't believe they're supernatural?" "No. Neither do I." Ethan folded his arms. "Then what are they?" The sheriff looked out at the waves again. "I honestly don't know." There was something about the way he said it. Not defensive, not rehearsed, just tired. As if he'd spent years searching for the same answer. "I've investigated every disappearance since becoming sheriff. No footprints, no signs of violence, no ransom, no suspects. They vanish, then come back, and none of them remember." Ethan watched him closely. "You believe them?" "I do." The answer came without hesitation. For the first time, Ethan believed the sheriff was telling the truth. Noah walked toward the spiral staircase. "If you plan on staying in town," he smiled warmly. "My office door is always open." He tipped his hat to Isla. "Try not to wander tonight." She smiled politely. "I won't." The sheriff descended the stairs. His footsteps slowly disappeared. Only after the lighthouse door closed below did Ethan exhale. "What do you think?" Isla looked toward the staircase. "I think he's hiding something." "You don't trust him?" "I trust that he wants to protect this town." "That's not the same thing." Ethan nodded. "I noticed something." "What?" "He never once asked why we came here." Isla frowned. "You're right." He already knew. Ethan walked back to the telescope. "I'm more interested in what he didn't want us to see." He carefully aimed it toward the hidden path again. This time, the metal door built into the cliff was slightly open. It hadn't been open before. Someone had entered, or left. "I think we should go." Isla looked uncertain. "That path is dangerous." "So is not knowing." She hesitated, then smiled. "I was hoping you'd say that." Together they left the lighthouse and followed the narrow trail leading north along the cliffs. The ocean crashed far below them. Wildflowers swayed in the salty breeze. The hidden path grew narrower with every step until they reached the old pine tree. Standing beside it, the metal door was waiting, covered in moss and nearly invisible against the rock. Ethan slowly pushed it open. Cold air drifted out. It smelled of salt, wet stone, and something older. A lantern hung on the wall just inside, still warm. Someone had lit it recently. A narrow tunnel stretched into darkness beneath the cliffs. As Ethan lifted the lantern, his flashlight beam swept across the stone floor. He froze. Fresh footprints, 2 sets, one large, one small. The smaller footprints ended abruptly halfway down the tunnel, as though the person had simply vanished. Ethan looked at Isla. "Stay close." She nodded. Without another word, they stepped into the darkness. Behind them, the heavy metal door slowly creaked shut on its own. Neither of them noticed until they heard the lock click. The heavy metal door locked behind them with a deep metallic click. Neither Ethan nor Isla spoke. The tunnel stretched ahead, illuminated only by the flickering lantern hanging from Ethan's hand. Cold air drifted through the passage. It smelled of salt water, old stone, and something else. Fresh coffee. Ethan frowned. Someone's been here recently. Isla noticed it too. This place shouldn't smell lived in. They continued deeper beneath the cliffs. The tunnel slowly widened until it opened into a vast underground cavern. Ethan stopped in disbelief. This is impossible. The cave was enormous. Wooden walkways connected natural rock platforms. Oil lamps hung from iron hooks. Shelves filled with journals, maps, medical supplies, blankets, canned food, and fishing equipment lined the walls. Someone had built an entire hidden refuge beneath Blackwater Cove. "It looks," Isla whispered, "like people lived here." They did. The voice echoed through the cavern. Both of them turned instantly. An elderly man stepped from the shadows. His silver beard reached nearly to his chest. He leaned on a carved wooden cane, but his blue eyes were sharp and alert. He didn't seem surprised to see them. Instead, he smiled. "I've been expecting you." Ethan instinctively stepped in front of Isla. "Who are you?" "My name is Thomas Ashcroft. I've watched over this place for almost 30 years. You sent the letter?" Thomas nodded. "I did." "And the compass?" "Yes. You knew I'd come. I hoped you would." Ethan folded his arms. "Then tell me what's happening." Thomas's smile slowly faded. "For 42 years, this town has lived with a lie." He walked toward an old wooden table covered with dozens of journals. The people who disappeared. They weren't kidnapped. They weren't cursed. And they weren't sleepwalking. Isla's heart began to race. Then where did they go? Thomas looked directly at her. "They came here." Silence filled the cavern. Ethan stared at him. Why would anyone come here willingly? They didn't. They came because someone convinced them it was the only way to survive. Thomas opened one of the journals. Every page contained names, dates, photographs. They were witnesses. "Witnesses to what?" Ethan asked. Thomas sighed deeply. "Years ago, Blackwater Cove became a stopping point for smugglers using the sea caves beneath these cliffs. People who accidentally discovered the operation were given two choices." He paused. "Disappear or die." Isla's breathing caught. "So they hid." Thomas nodded. "They stayed underground for days, sometimes weeks. When it was finally safe, they returned home." "But why didn't they remember?" Thomas looked at Ethan. "They did remember." "What?" "They were told never to speak. The sheriff, the doctor, the mayor. They convinced every survivor that silence was the only thing keeping them alive." Ethan frowned. "So the missing memories were never missing." Thomas nodded sadly. "They were buried by fear." Isla slowly stepped forward. "What about me?" Thomas's expression softened. "You were different." "I don't understand." He reached into a weathered wooden chest. Carefully, he removed a faded photograph. He handed it to her. The picture showed a little girl, no older than 8, standing beside a woman Ethan recognized immediately. Isla's mother. Behind them stood Thomas. And a smiling man wearing a sheriff's uniform. Not Noah Brooks. Someone older. The badge on his chest read, Sheriff Daniel Brooks. Thomas pointed to the man. Noah's father. Ethan looked between the photograph and Thomas. What does he have to do with this? Thomas took a slow breath. Everything. He looked at Isla. The night your mother died, she didn't bring you to the lighthouse. She brought you here. Isla's knees weakened. What? You were hiding. From the people who were hunting your family. Tears filled her eyes. My mother. Thomas nodded. Never died in an accident. A long silence followed. Then he quietly finished the sentence. She was murdered. At that exact moment, footsteps echoed through the tunnel behind them. Heavy. Steady. Someone else had entered the cave. And judging by the sound, they weren't alone. The footsteps grew louder. Lantern lights spilled into the cavern as 3 figures emerged from the tunnel. Sheriff Noah Brooks walked in first. Behind him stood Evelyn, and finally, Margaret Holloway, the florist Ethan had met on his first day in town. Noah slowly removed his hat. "I'm glad you found this place." Ethan stepped in front of Isla. "You knew?" Noah nodded. "I've known about these caves my entire life." "Then why hide them?" "Because my father made a terrible mistake." The sheriff looked at the old photograph in Isla's trembling hands. "My father wasn't part of the smugglers. He was trying to stop them." Thomas sighed. "But he realized too late that powerful people outside the town were involved." Noah continued. "When witnesses discovered the truth, my father hid them here. He spread the story of the full moon disappearances. The legend frightened outsiders, and it protected innocent people." Ethan frowned. "So the curse never existed?" "No," Thomas smiled gently. "Only frightened people trying to survive." Isla looked down at the photograph of her mother. "Then why was she killed?" Silence settled over the cave. Margaret stepped forward. "Because she gathered evidence. She planned to expose everyone." Tears filled Isla's eyes. "And me?" "You were only 8. Margaret gently held her hands. "Your mother begged us to protect you. So we did. We raised you. We watched over you. The bookstore. The lighthouse. Even Oliver finding you. It wasn't luck. We made sure you were never alone." Isla began to cry. "My whole life. You were protecting me." Evelyn smiled through tears. "Your mother was my best friend. I made her one promise. I would keep you safe. And I intend to keep it." Ethan finally understood. The mysterious letter, the compass, the warnings. None of them had been meant to scare him. They had been guiding him. "You wanted someone from outside the town." Thomas nodded. "Someone who would finally tell the truth." Ethan reached into his pocket and held up his notebook. "I will. No ghost stories. No curse. Just the truth." Noah smiled. "That's all we've ever wanted." Several weeks later, Blackwater Cove returned to its quiet rhythm. Ethan's article spread across the country. It told the real story of a small town that had protected innocent people by hiding behind a legend. The abandoned smuggling network was uncovered. The remaining criminals were arrested. For the first time in decades, no one feared the full moon. Summer slowly arrived. Tourists filled the harbor. Children laughed along the beach. The lighthouse once again became a place people visited for its view instead of its mysteries. One warm evening, Ethan stood beside Isla at the top of the cliffs. The ocean stretched endlessly before them. Peaceful, endless. He reached into his pocket. "I've been carrying this for weeks." She looked at him. "What is it?" "The silver compass." Its cracked glass still reflected the evening light. He placed it gently in her hand. It finally stopped spinning. Isla looked down. The needle pointed steadily north. "It's found its way home." Ethan smiled. "Just like I have." She slipped her fingers into his. "So, are you staying in Blackwater Cove?" He looked toward the bookstore below. The windows glowed warmly. Oliver slept peacefully on the front step. "I came looking for a mystery." He turned to her. "But I found a reason to stay." Isla leaned her head against his shoulder as the lighthouse beam swept across the calm sea. For the first time in 42 years, the full moon rose over Blackwater Cove without taking anyone away. Some mysteries are solved by asking the right questions. Others by finding the right person to search beside you. And sometimes, the greatest love stories begin where the last mystery ends. The end.